Well, the Buckeye football season's upon us. We're going to break things down with our guys, Dave Holmes of 10 TV, along with the one and only Adam King from 10 TV. In the house, former Buckeye defensive back, MVP of the national championship game, Tyvis Powell, along with Tim May, 97.1 The Fan, Letterman Row. Dave, we're going to start with the quarterback race at Ohio State. No position at Ohio State gets more attention than the quarterback. Do you think Ryan Day is settled on someone? Do you think he's close on someone? It looks to be a two-man race between Kyle McCord and Devin Brown.
No, I don't think he's settled on it. I mean, I still think Kyle McCord is the incumbent and most likely to win the job, but I think he wanted to settle on it sooner. Now, we could debate if it's smart to name a starter in spring in a transfer portal world. Maybe it's not smart to do that. We've seen it burn teams in the past, but I don't think he's settled. I just think with the chemistry with Marvin Harrison Jr., McCord being the guy who was already there, to me, it's McCord's to lose, but Ryan Day's not going to mess around. You don't want to waste reps, so you don't want to waste first-team reps. If he thinks McCord is clearly his guy, he would make him his guy.
In your mind, Tim May, how big of an advantage does McCord have? Because he's been around the program. He has been the backup. I mean, some are saying he's deserving of it. 2 years in a row, he's been sitting waiting.
Yeah, deserving may not be the correct term, but he's actually started and won a game, in place of C.J. Stroud 2 years ago as a true freshman against Akron. And as Urban Meyer said when I brought that up to him, he goes, yeah, but that was against Akron. Yeah, it wasn't like
wasn't Kent
Wayne
State.
Haskins Jr. going in,
That's right.
in the second half trailing at Michigan.
Yeah.
But with that said, and as you pointed out, Dom, he's been the backup to C.J. Stroud the last 2 years. He had a lead going into spring and had a lead going into preseason camp. His challenge is to hang on to that lead.
Tyvis, Devin Brown is a guy that wouldn't be here if Ryan Day didn't want him. He is the quarterback whisperer. I mean, the guy passes the look test. With that said, make an argument for him why he could be the guy.
Well, I mean, he definitely brings athleticism. He's mobile. I mean, that's one thing that we struggled with C.J. Stroud with last year. You know how many times we watched the TV and said, just run? But with Devin Brown, that's not going to be an issue. He does a great job of extending plays. And, I mean, the guy does have a great arm. I mean, I think that, listen, if it's neck and neck, that athleticism may outweigh, what Kyle McCord is bringing to the table. But I think the biggest aspect is they both are working on leadership. That's going to be a huge thing. CJ was a guy in that locker room that got the attention of everybody, And now that he's gone, somebody has to step up and fill that void. I think both of them are doing a really good job.
Yeah, and what we saw in the spring and in preseason camp is Kyle McCord can run too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's effective when he takes off. He's pretty good at reading the rush, so to speak. Do you want him running the wishbone in the 1970s? No. Although some of those Oklahoma quarterbacks he could take a part of, but he has much more athleticism than I think some people give him credit for.
Adam, this is going to be a rookie, whoever it is, and there'll be a learning curve with whoever it is. And Ryan Day was asked about, a quick trigger and a pull and how do you go? And he said, I messed up and they gave me chances. With that said, whoever it is, and obviously leadership's going to be big, competitiveness, but how about just staying within the lane, understanding that they've got a weapon of receivers like no team in the country, and understanding that you just got to get the ball to them, distribute.
They're getting the keys to the Lamborghini. All they've got to do is keep it in the lane. And I think both of these guys are very capable of doing just that. I think there's been almost a misconception this offseason of either or Kyle McCord or Devin Brown. They just have to steer the ship. But in retrospect, both of these guys are more than capable of going out and starring out in their own right. I mean, look back on C.J. Stroud when he started. There was kind of this, we don't know how good he's going to be. Well, he was a number 2 overall pick. I think both of these guys have that capability. The thing that most interests me is that Ryan Day said if he has to kind of perfectly describe what he wants from Ohio State's quarterback this season, he would pick C.J. against Georgia. C.J. against Georgia played kind of with reckless abandonment. He played to win the game. So I think if you go in there as a quarterback and you're timid and you're worried about the guy over your shoulder, that's obviously far from what Ryan Day is focused on.
But I don't think anybody at this table expects whoever ends up getting the job to be perfect from the get-go and stay that way.
No.
Right, Tyvis?
CJ wasn't perfect.
I want to run this by Tyvis. How important is it for the team to know who the starting quarterback is sooner rather than later?
Well, I tell you what, in 2015 when it was Cardell versus JT, I had no idea until the day before the game. And the thing is that when you're in college, you have your own thing. Especially as a defensive guy, I'm worried about the defense, okay? I can't really focus on what's going on the offensive side. But I think from a wide receiver standpoint and as an offensive standpoint.
And a leadership standpoint.
it is very important to know who to listen to. You know, who's the guy that once the game kicks off, who is the guy that's going to steer the boat? Who is that we're coming to for leadership and guidance? So I think it's important for him to name that guy early.
And we all know that injuries are the equalizer. We saw Ohio State win a national championship with the third quarterback.
Yeah.
We saw last season a stable of running backs depleted to who started in the Georgia game, and
Chip trained him, right?
So with that said, Ryan Day said he had hoped, and Tyvis, I want to start with you because you were a player in the NIL world and the transfer portal and everything that lives now. He wanted to name a starter coming out of spring.
Yeah.
Well, Devin Brown broke a finger. That didn't happen, and so now Devin Brown's back. When he names a starter, let's say he takes Kyle McCord, how hard is it to keep that backup in the game at the school in today's day and world where you're Joe Burrow and you go to LSU and win the Heisman Trophy?
I mean, it's funny you say that, Don, because the thing is, if all these kids want to go to the NFL, the only way to go to the NFL is to have game tape. Now, in a perfect world, you want a guy like Kyle McCord, who sat behind guys for a few years. He got the development, he got to learn some things, and then boom, he's able to go in there and fight for this starting position. I think that if Devin Brown does lose this job to Kyle McCord, I don't think necessarily he should want to just run away. Under Ryan Day, his history is all of his quarterbacks go first round. So with that being said, you're learning from the best. You might as well wait. Who knows? Kyle McCord goes out there, have a really good year. Dwayne Haskins only took 1 year, and he was out of there.
That's the dream scenario for
Kyle
Ohio
McCord
State.
goes out there and lights it up. Devin Brown is up to you next year. So
and
why
then you've
not?
got 2 years to go out and be the starting quarterback at Ohio State. If you're a Buckeye fan, the dream scenario is both of these guys start in their career. And then when Devin's gone, you've got Aaron Nolan or Lincoln.
And he brought up 2015. Cardale Jones started that season coming off the national championship.
Right.
He won the national championship game, part of it, excuse me. You were involved also.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
MVP.
I heard him, right?
But the point was, middle of the season, that Indiana game finally became apparent. J.T. Barrett was, once again, the better answer for what y'all needed on offense. So it never, I don't think it ever pays off to just wander off when you don't get your number called to begin with, because you never know what's going to happen.
Dave, we have seen weird things happen at Ohio State with the quarterback position, and I remember when we had two guys playing, and I asked Ryan Day the other day, do you see a scenario where both would play? He never really answered the question. Do you see that scenario where that could happen?
So I asked him the same thing in Indianapolis, Lucas Hoyle for Big Ten Media Day. I said, would you go regular season action with two guys? A certain school up north has done the same thing. He said, I'm open to everything, but I would love for someone to separate before then. Meaning, I think if his back is against the wall, he would have to. I think he's really hoping that someone makes it clear. But the thing about separation is, if, as Adam said, if both guys are good enough to start, it might not be as clear as you want it to be. You might just have to trust that you can't make the wrong decision.
Yeah,
if both guys are good and ready, and maybe you can't mess it up.
I like his answer because it covered the waterfront.
Yeah, right.
I mean, clearly, I think you want a starting quarterback sooner rather than later, just like Tyvis was talking about, just so everybody knows who's in charge. And number two, you kind of get into what does this guy do best, and giddy up, get on down the road. And it's an interesting conundrum for a head coach because it sets the tone for everything else to come.
My favorite question at Big Ten Media Day was, who's the backup quarterback?
Yeah, that was from me.
That's right.
Well, who is it?
He started off with Lincoln Keenholz and Tristan Jebby. He knew what I was asking. Ryan Day could run for office.
Yeah.
With that said, last thing, guys, whoever the starter is, and we mentioned it's going to be a learning curve, and Ryan was asked about that because he got to start in college as a young quarterback.
And I asked him about it.
And you asked him about that. How patient do you think he's really going to be? Because there's a difference to me between New Hampshire and Ohio State.
Well, of course there is, but you're still running a football team that's trying to win. And I brought up to him that, he got named the starter. Then he proceeded in his first half of the season to throw 8 touchdown passes, but 10 interceptions. But the offensive coordinator then was a guy named Chip Kelly. You've heard of him.
Yeah,
right?
I heard of him.
At New Hampshire. And the head coach stuck with him, which I thought was important. And that's what I was asking him about is once you make that decision, you put all these variables together and you've come up with this with this answer, including probably a gut call, even though Jim Harbaugh said, well, that may be gas. That's why you don't go on gut calls. But the bottom line is you kind of owe it to yourself and to that player to stick with him for a while, right, Tyvis?
Yeah, I mean, listen, C.J. Stroud, when he became the starter, that Minnesota game, it was up and down. You know, for the next few games, it was up and down.
People were saying, let's put the backup.
They were saying
wanted Kyle.
They were saying Kyle, Quinn Ewers, everybody. But you know what? Ryan Day stuck with him. The worst thing you could do is turn your back on the kid after a couple of games in, because that might demoralize him for the rest of his career. And I think Ryan Day is more about these kids, and he cares about his players more. So I think he's going to stick with whoever he names the starter until unless it's an injury that comes up, which Kyle McCord
The
got
schedule's
his start.
perfect, too. The schedule gives you a few before Notre Dame that you can make
And then
some
you'll
make
get
some
your
mistakes.
backups in
Look out for those
Johnstown
Penguins,
State.
though.
You'll see.
Yeah.
All right, last thing. I'm going to start with you. Who's the starter and who's the starter at the end of the year?
Lincoln Kine. No, I'm just the starter.
Yeah.
I think it's Kyle McCord. I mean, like everybody said.
From start to finish this year?
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's Kyle McCord going into it. He has the lead. It looks to me like he's hanging on to it. I believe it's Kyle McCord.
Kyle McCord, both ends.
Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, that's
He will start for Texas.
I do think it's really, really close. I think it could be either. I'm going to change it up here. I'll say I think it's Devin Brown because of the athleticism.
I think it's Kyle,
It's gonna be
but you know, there again at the end, who's healthy?
They're both really good.
You know?
Yeah, I think both these guys can drive that Lamborghini.
Yeah. All right, guys, great stuff. Keep it on 10 TV, 97.1 The Fan for all your Buckeye coverage needs. Well, the Buckeye football season's upon us. We're going to break things down with our guys, Dave Holmes and Adam King, 10 TV, along with former Buckeye defensive back Tyvis Powell, 97.1 The Fan. You hear him on the radio, along with Tim May, 97.1 The Fan, Letta Monroe. On offense, guys, the Buckeyes look to be loaded with talent. Tim May, Marvin Harrison Jr., is he the best receiver in college football this year?
Yeah, and he was last year, so that's an easy answer.
Heisman hunt for him?
Definitely he's in the Heisman hunt. I mean, he claims he's not really paying attention to all that, but other people will be paying attention to that for him. But this guy can do it all, as he's proven. Can break it deep, can out-jump a guy, can out-position a guy, and really, the bottom line is he always makes the catch. So, yeah.
You know, Tyvis last year was his coming out party. He was amazing. We got a glimpse of him though the season before at the end in the Rose Bowl. So some might say he snuck up on some people. He's not sneaking up on anyone this year. Heck, he's on potato chips now. He is a household name. With that said, how do teams cover him this year?
Well, it'll be a lot of double teams and a lot of cover two to his side. When you got a receiver like Marvin Harrison Jr., you have to bracket him. You have to have a game plan. But the problem with doing that, Ohio State is so talented that if you spend all of your energy and time on trying to stop Marvin Harrison, Emeka Ibuka's over there, Julian Fleming's over there, Cade Stover's there. So it's so many guys that you have to worry about that you just have to hope that you got a guy, a dude that wants to make some money and go to the next level and have him go one-on-one with Marvin Harrison and pray that Marvin Harrison is having a bad game.
He made Keely Ringo look funny.
He did.
In the college football playoff semifinal, he made Joey Porter Jr. look funny.
One thing that
against Penn State.
One thing Marvin Harrison is going to do for a corner, he either going to make you some money or lose you some money.
And he did that last year.
Well, Dave, following up with what he said, I mean, defenses are going to have to pick their poison, right?
Yeah.
If you double team him, Emeka's open and whatever, how much of a fit is this giving defensive coordinators around the country that's going to face Ohio State, and what do you think they try to do to keep from getting killed?
Yeah, I mean, it's what Tyvis said is true. They're going to have to give extra attention. To me, Emeka Ibuka is about to have the Jackson Smith and Jigba season of a couple years ago, because that year was supposed to be Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and JSN goes out and leads the team in receiving yards. I think no doubt Marvin Harrison Jr. has the most touchdowns. I think Emeka Ibuka might lead the team in yards because I think he's going to be the guy who gets less attention. He's in the first round, too. I mean, he's in every first round. Yes, every mock has him in the top 10 or 15 of the draft. So, to me, that's the problem. And the guy who really needs to show up is Travion Henderson, because if they're going to really sag off and play everyone back, then you got to be able to run the ball.
Well, that sets up the next thing, Adam. When they're not throwing the ball, they have what many are calling the best running back room in the country. Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams, Dallin Hayden, Chip Trainin, Evan Pryor, and the list goes on. If they keep everyone healthy, now we said that a year ago, and we were down to the last back.
Yeah.
Who carries the rock this year, and how does Tony Alford keep all these guys happy?
So what I think you do is you put Marvin and Emeka and Julian on the bench, and you just put 2 running backs, and then all the rest. Yeah, and just
Your wishbone.
There you
I said
go.
they should run
That's
the
how you keep
wishbone.
them happy.
Still, they can do it.
Give Tony Alford credit. He wouldn't take credit on his interviews when he said having all of them here. In the day and age of transfer portals, the idea that every one of these guys stuck around, knowing that Travion Henderson is considered to be one of the best backs in the country, that Mayan had dominated, set the record for touchdowns last season. Evan Pryor coming in was supposed to be the dynamic duo with Travion Henderson. We've only gotten to see him in that spring game. This running back room is undoubtedly the best in the country. And you saw the Iron Sherpin's Iron Award. Oh, they handed it to Chip Trainum. So when you look at all of this, I don't know how you keep them all happy, but I think the good news is that you got a lot of toys to play with.
And Tim May, the funny thing is, and I was talking to Coach Cooper the other day, and I remember we asked him back when he was coaching, and he had a stable of running backs. He had some great ones, Tyvis, and we said, Coop, how do you keep all those guys happy? And he says, I don't worry about keeping them happy. They got to worry about keeping the old coach happy. I'm the guy that decides who plays. Well, that ship sailed, and today you got to keep them happy.
Very
I asked
1995.
I asked Tony Alford the other day. I said, do you owe each of these guys some opportunities? And he looked at me cross-eyed, almost funny, because the O word is not what you're looking for. Yeah. You're looking for each of these guys to get better this year than they were last year and to earn those opportunities. But we all know the pecking order starts with Travion Henderson, who appears to be back and whole again athletically after getting surgery on his foot at the end of the year last year, because he's got that wiggle back. And another guy's got that wiggle back is Evan Pryor. Mm-hmm. So they had big plans for Evan Pryor this time a year ago till he got hurt and missed the whole year. They're going to need them all because, as you saw, they had the same number of guys on the roster this time a year ago. And who was playing?
Xavier Johnson.
Xavier Johnson, Mitch Rossi were the running backs at times on that last drive.
Unreal. It's unreal.
You never know what's going to come down the pike.
The thing about it, keeping them happy, the reason that it works is because all of them bring a different aspect.
Yeah,
Travion Henderson is the speed guy. Mayan is the power back. Evan is the elusive guy. Xavier Johnson is a mismatch lineup if you put him in the backfield against somebody. And Chip Trainum is one of the best returners and one of the fastest guys on the team. Mm-hmm. So therefore, they all – the way the running backs is nowadays, you need them all because you're going to get banged up. Everybody's not going to be 100%. It's always games that they like to run 2 running backs out there, and now they got 6 of them to choose from.
And if all these guys have aspirations to play to the next level, it's good for them that maybe they won't.
Let's tread.
They won't have to give one guy
Exactly.
800 carries.
All right, guys, last game of the season against Georgia, we saw Ohio State really open up things against on offense at least, and really should have won that game. With that said, what do you think Ryan Day learned in that game about his players, about his offense, and will there be carryover this year?
I asked him that question. A light came on. You've got the best offensive players in the country, and they played giddy up, man, against Georgia. And you just get, from every conversation we've had with him since then, you just get the idea that's the way he wants to come out of the gate in 2023 is playing with that kind of approach. And he made the point that both of these quarterbacks can run. Mm-hmm. He wants that part of the attack from the get-go, not just something you got to run to from a desperate situation or finally turning to C.J. Stroud and saying, hey, carry the team, man. Do whatever it takes. And I'm talking about going to that Georgia game. He's got 2 guys who he thinks can run the ball, which is going to open up all kinds of things.
It's not just that Georgia game, though. There's another game in Ryan Day's tenure where he just let the reins loose.
2019 against
Clemson.
Yeah.
He just said, let's play football. Yeah. And both times, you look what happened. It was the best Buckeye offense we've seen in the last 3-4 years. He's just got to do that every game. And the problem is, I think inherently in coaching, you're afraid of the mistake. And a lot of coaches, that's their job, is to be the one that thinks, okay, we don't want to make a mistake.
Yeah, I think you meant 2020. You're talking
about 2020. 2019 was in
2019 was a good game.
It was good. But in 2020,
right?
They just let it fly. And I think inherently Ryan Day just needs to understand that mistakes are going to happen. You've got a young quarterback, but in the end, you're going to make a lot more highlight plays with these guys if you'll let them just play football.
Dave, over the years, we have seen some great offenses, and really under Ryan Day, it's just been a progression after progression. I mean, you saw Dwayne Haskins break all those records, and then here's Fields, and now C.J. Stroud, and it just keeps building. With that said, this team really looks loaded with talent. I mean, really looks loaded. and including a quarterback. Either one of those guys could start anywhere. Is this the best? Might we be seeing the best offense in Ohio State history this year? Should fans be excited because they're loaded? I mean, best running back room, best receiver room.
Whoa.
O-line and quarterback.
You don't think? I'm saying
Whoa.
total.
Whoa.
Total.
Whoa.
All right, go ahead.
You want to take this one?
I'm just saying.
On paper. I'm saying on paper.
I got a ring that says otherwise.
Whoa.
I didn't even realize he was going there.
Wow, okay, so
All
he's
right.
going to defend his guys.
Go Bucks.
I respect that.
No, I agree. They were great.
To me, when you have all three healthy, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think that might be better than what they have this year.
But they got more. They got Carriel Tate. They got Brandon Ennis. They got these guys coming on.
Deeper.
Paris Johnson, Luke Whippler, DeJuan Jones. That O-line was
Yeah, so I don't know if it's. I don't know. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. has the chance to be the best
receiver
the school's
might
ever
win
seen.
the Heisman.
Yeah, so
could.
he might be the best receiver we've ever seen at the school. Probably is, honestly, at the end of this year. So, yeah, I can see that. I mean, a lot of that's going to come down to how Kyle or Devin play, whoever wins that job. The potential's certainly there. For me, the biggest fear is always the offensive line on this team.
Yeah, that's the
replacing
big
several
deal.
starters. That, to me,
does the offensive line come together like I think it will? Who's
That's-
going to be the starting right
Well,
tackle?
and that's what I wanted to ask next because they hit the transfer portal hard.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like they've got it solved, but you won't know until you actually get into battle. But they passed the look test just from what we've seen.
Well, I mean, you know, they hit the portal for a reason because in the spring, for example, they maybe didn't get all the answers they wanted. So you go out and get Josh, call me Jimmy Simmons from San Diego State. You know, and Victor Cutler, obviously from Louisiana Monroe, came earlier than that. But the point is, I think there's still a conundrum as we tape this. There's still a conundrum of who's going to be that starting right tackle, who's going to be the starting center. It looks like Carson Hinsman, and is Josh Fryer going to hold off a freshman by the name of Luke Montgomery for that starting left tackle job? That's the launch pad is always important. Just ask Elon Musk.
Do you think this is going back on the offensive line recruiting from Stud's days? I mean, I don't want to put Stud down, but do you feel like we're finally seeing the impact of that?
Yeah, but you know, but this is what's funny when we were talking about big games they're facing. You know, in an earlier segment, you know that Tom Allen has nothing to lose this year. He needs to win,
right.
And they are going to attack with every blitz, scam, whatever you want to call it, up front to test a new offensive line and a new starting quarterback. We're going to get a lot more answers than you think from that Indiana game.
I'm going to finish with you, Tyvis, because you know, and I'm not saying this is the best. I'm saying on paper, and when you read the Proscott, they think these guys are great. Everything you see, Marvin Harrison. With that said, if there's one thing that concerns you with the offense, what is it?
Offensive line, easily. That's the easiest answer there could be because the thing is, if you can't protect, then at the end of the day, there's nothing we can do. If we can't hold up to get Kyle McCord to be able to go through his reads and his progressions to find his open receivers, then it's not going to happen. If we can't open up holes for a great Travion Henderson, Mayan, and all 5, 10 other running backs that's in the backfield, it doesn't matter. So at the end of the day, it's offensive line. If they don't produce, then this season.
Yeah, this hitting 7-on-7.
And to me, the key is, like you said, the Georgia game where they came out aggressive. Urban Meyer, his record was good, obviously really good, but as an underdog, it was next level. And when we saw Ryan Day coach as an underdog, it was a different game. They need to have that mindset even when they're 20-point favorites.
Well, they're an underdog too.
In the conference.
If you look at the rankings, I mean, that's up on the wall. Okay, guys, great stuff. Keep it on 10 TV. 97.1 The Fan for all your Buckeye football needs. Well, the Buckeye football season's upon us. We're going to break things down with our guys, Dave Holmes and Adam King, 10 TV, along with former Buckeye defensive back Tyvis Powell. You hear him on 97.1 The Fan, along with Tim May, 97.1 The Fan, and Letterman Row. Other than the Michigan game, I want to talk about games that are big on the schedule and what games might give you a concern other than that team up north. I want to start with the first game on the road at Indiana, Dave. And, you say Indiana, it's a game over there. By the way, you'll be able to watch it right here on 10 TV. Is that game over there a booby trap game? And they've been a test in the past.
It's interesting to start in the Big Ten. It's interesting to start on the road, so you do both at the same time. There's a little element there. Indiana's been fluky. I remember, I think it was 2015, the game Zeke had to bust 3 50-plus touchdowns just to kind of sneak out of Bloomington.
Whoa.
You were there that day.
Whoa.
You were there that day.
I don't like the way you phrased that.
What, sneak out of Bloomington?
Yeah.
Oh, you blew the doors off?
No, we did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no. So that game got scary. I mean, we've seen some crazy things with Indiana. I remember J.K. Dobbins had his freshman bust-out game there on the road.
Justin Fields here.
Yeah, so I think they're going to be fine. But, yeah, you want to bring it. I mean, a road game in the conference is not the ideal way to start.
Tim, non-conference, the Buckeyes host Youngstown State, Western Kentucky. You told me the other day you were a little worried.
Not worried.
Western
Circle
Kentucky. Now, wait a minute.
What I told you.
You said don't sleep on Western Kentucky.
What I told you was, has Ohio State fixed its pass defense? It's give up the
All
big
right.
play pass defense. Yeah. Austin Reed led the nation in passing last year. He's the quarterback at Western Kentucky. They had the best passing attack in the nation from a prolific standpoint. They will get a test in that game.
All right.
Because
You heard it here first. Tim May guarantees a loss.
The Hilltoppers are going to come in throwing it from beginning to end.
Yep.
Adam, September 23rd, the Buckeyes get the rematch with Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame, over there, a night game. Is that a booby trap game?
Well, I don't think it can be a booby trap because if you're stumbling past that game, you obviously haven't looked at the calendar. I will say it feels weird because last year this felt like the biggest opener in Ohio State history. It felt like there was so much hoopla around this game. And now it feels like, oh, they're going up to Notre Dame week 3. That'll be kind of cool and see how that goes. I think that's because, one, Ohio State's still trying to figure some things out at quarterback. And two, Notre Dame's got a lot of questions of their own. I mean, you're not seeing them in the top 5 preseason polls sticking around this year. So I don't think it's a booby trap game. I do think it is the game where you truly learn whoever is QB1, are they truly ready to be quarterback one for this Buckeye
But you
team?
do believe Notre Dame's going to be more competent at quarterback with Sam Hartman. I mean,
Yeah. Yep.
it's funny Tyler
Yeah.
Buckner, who started against Ohio State last year, could be the starting quarterback at Alabama.
Yeah.
That's crazy when you think about it. But it has all the makings of maybe being a better game this year.
Yeah.
And Tyvis, that's why I say a booby trap game from the standpoint I'm listening to Buckeye Nation and fans are going, oh, Ohio State will go up. Would you see what we did to them a year ago? Well, the game was closer
fans.
than
Yeah.
and you know, you hear the prognosticator saying, oh, Ohio State's going to go there and roll. I mean, that game worries
Hold
me.
on, wait a minute, hold on, because let's remember that Ohio State opened up the season against them last year. They
Yes.
had a brand new defensive coordinator.
Yes.
First play of the game, obviously it's a huge play.
It was almost a sack.
Almost don't count. We're not here for that.
Keyword.
So you got to realize that they were still learning the defense. There was a lot of adjustments going on. And I think now that it's year 2 in the defense, I can speak from experience, you're more confident. So I don't think we'll see those things. I think Jim Knowles has done a great job of addressing things, such as the jack position, putting Jack Sawyer's hand back in the ground, you know, getting more guys out there, Sonny Styles, Lathan Ransom, these
C.J.
guys,
Hicks.
moving these corners, playing them off sometimes, you know, things like that. So the little details is going to make this defense a lot better.
Penn State comes to town October 21st. They're going to come in here. They're going to want to beat Ohio State. They're getting love. They're ranked. And this will be the last time they play for who knows when.
Mm-hmm.
Can any of you one here explain to me why, A, Ohio State would not throw a fit, that this is not a protected rivalry, and why Penn State would go along with it? Someone explain to me.
Go ahead.
Now, I don't understand why the TV networks aren't throwing a protected.
Yeah,
fit.
well, I'm
Because it's been one of the highest rated
I'ma
regular
tell you,
season games in the
listen.
country for forever.
Let me tell you why.
Yeah.
Because the Big Ten wants to make this fair. Now, they're going to have to redo it now that Oregon and Washington is coming in. They might have to go back and reassess what they did.
Definitely.
But if they continue to go along without Penn State being a protected rivalry game, it's to try to protect them from having the team up north and Ohio State back-to-back. See, now if they don't have to play Ohio State and they don't have to necessarily play the team up north every year, that means their record will be really good. So if they're 11-1, 12-0, and the Buckeyes or the team up north loses a game, boom, now they don't have to worry about seeing a back-to-back repeat because Penn State is a really good school.
I'm very interested with what you just said and with the pushback because there was a ton of pushback that Penn State wasn't on that list. Well, now they got to redo it all.
Yeah.
And so I'm interested to see if because of that pushback, Penn State ends up being, if I'm James Franklin, I don't want that game. If I'm going to see Ohio State, I want to see them in a Big Ten title game.
But I think the league was looking at the fact they can sprinkle Penn State in on everybody now.
Yeah.
You know, the newcomers coming in. I mean, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan are still the main draws when they go out of town, and I think they're almost like wild cards. And so with these new guys coming into the league, they want to create as many marquee matchups as they can get. But I think when you throw one away, which is Penn State, Ohio State, that's a major mistake.
And I want to follow up with you, Dave, and Tyvis brought it up, the addition now of Oregon and Washington. I actually like the Washington move. That's a big market. And you know how I feel about Oregon. I think
they're soft.
The most overrated team in America.
Didn't look like it at the shoe. But
What? Will you cut that out?
Well, I'm just saying. They brought it. No,
beat Ohio
Dave's never given up a touchdown.
One time. That
Okay.
does not, okay. But I mean, do you like it?
Okay, so first off, I think it's dumb. That's a whole nother roundtable if you want to get into
I'm just
the
asking.
realignment. No, I don't like it. So I don't like it overall because at this point, let's just do the NFL thing. 9-3 gets you in the playoffs, and let's play. That's what it needs to do. But back to Penn State. Okay, so
Wait a minute. You can't just skate over that.
All right, give me 20 seconds on Penn State. So they have Drew Aller, who is a top Ohio kid at quarterback. Nick Singleton might be the best running back in the country. They've scared the Buckeyes at the shoe a little bit in the past. So, I know Indiana Jones here keeps talking about booby traps. I think if there is one, a home game, you feel this false sense of security. That one makes me slightly
worries
nervous.
me sick. Hey,
Now,
this
said
schedule,
the realignment's
this
trash.
schedule
Well, you
is
cut
in
that
the
out.
Realignment is trash.
Listen,
You're the guy that I got annoyed with on Twitter. It's not doomsday.
There's only one negative thing about the realignment.
What's that, Tyvis?
And that is the fact that the families won't be able to travel to some of these games. Outside of that,
It's great for the
preparing
sport.
them.
What do you mean? They're
Listen,
making
No,
money.
I agree. No, he's right. I can't wait to watch Rutgers softball fly to Washington.
Listen, you
and play
get
Seattle. That's great.
better matchups that people actually want to tune in to watch.
Other sports besides football.
So you make that okay. You also want these guys want to go professional. Guess what? They're going to play more big games in their careers. So now they got a better chance of performing well and making it to the next level.
Yeah.
So it's better from a film aspect.
You would
The only
rather
thing-
see Ohio State play Rutgers than play Oregon?
But let's not forget that Rutgers was actually part of expansion. That was part of the problem, too.
Okay.
Rutgers should have never
You'd
been
rather
in
see
here in the
Ohio
first
State
place
play
either.
Purdue than
You can
Oregon?
drive to Rutgers.
Yeah, you can drive to Rutgers.
And Rutgers has got the New York market.
I
All
know.
right. After Penn State,
yeah.
things only get tougher, and this game scares the heck out of me. A trip to Madison, which is, and you've been, and Tim, you've been, and Tyvis, you've played up there. To me, that's got to be if Penn State are there, it's a flip, which is tougher to go to. When
Happy
they do that
Valley
jump
is
around.
tough.
Yeah, but to go up there with Luke Fickell,
Jumping around?
I mean, holy smokes. Tell me why it'll be fine. Can someone tell me why I should
Well,
worry?
it'll be fine because this is just year one with Coach Fick.
Exactly.
So he won't have all of his guys there. Now, maybe in a couple of years when his recruits get there and he develops his players and they come through his system, then yeah, they'll still be very scary. But, now a lot of his guys that's on his rosters are guys that he inherited. So therefore, they won't be exactly ready or up to the standard. But they will be a really good game because Coach Fick is a really good coach. I mean, I love Coach Fick. I'd run through a wall for Coach Fick. So he's going to have his guys have that same passion and energy. I just don't think right now, recruiting-wise, with what they already had, it won't be a matchup for Ohio State.
And it is a tough place to play.
It is.
As you
Jump
brought up.
around is only fun when you win it.
Exactly, number one. And then number two, they have changed things. This isn't going to be Wisconsin of last year or the last 50 years. This is going to be a new, wide open kind of spread offense they've gone to. It's going to be a different look, but it's probably going to be more taxing on them than maybe it is Ohio State at that point in his first season as the head coach.
When I was in Toledo, I would cover Michigan and Ohio State equally up there, and I remember Rich Rod's first year at Michigan, and he was trying to go spread with the old personnel, and it was a bit of a square peg round hole. So I don't know if it's going to work right out of the gate as much as Fick wants it to. Their best player is probably Braylon Allen, their running back. I mean,
he definitely is.
He's a stud, so you want him to go for 2K. But I think what they're saying is the adjustment period gives me a little more hope for Ohio State.
Yeah, and the transfer quarterback from SMU. I mean, they
I
really
still think that this Wisconsin team is going to be very good this year. I think it's going to be a top 10 matchup when they walk into Wisconsin. I do.
Okay.
Could be.
And, I mean, they're preseason 21. I think it's very simple that they kind of run through their schedule until they get to Ohio State. And I know this doesn't make any sense, but if they make this a night game,
I love when you start a sentence like that.
well, if they make this a night
can it not
game,
be?
it changes everything.
It will be a night.
It could be a 3 o'clock game.
Unless
No, it'd
Fox
be a
has
night.
the rights to it.
That's what
it'll
I'm
be the
saying.
big
I mean, if you
big-
play
big
it then,
game, but
it feels less big.
And it's in the morning there. It'll be 11 a.m. But,
Yeah.
you know, that is, to me, there's no place tougher to go than there.
Yeah.
Best chocolate malt in the Big Ten is next door, too. Little place. I
at
forget
the
name of it.
drugstore.
Where else could you go?
they call it the drugstore?
Men,
Oh, yeah, no, it is. Yeah.
There-
Not like CVS. Yeah, right,
yeah.
go ahead.
grown men
Not
walking
Walgreens.
around with a dead badger on their
It's
head.
dude,
And, they're just, and
nothing
here,
scary.
have a
And there's
cheese
always somebody sitting in the crowd
Have a
with
cheese
his
curd.
hunting gear on.
Oh, yeah. You just never know.
Yeah.
They're hunting
Yeah.
rabbits.
Cheeseheads.
November 11th, the Buckeyes host Michigan State, a night game, November 11th. Boy, that's could be dicey. We'll see. Mel Tucker, 18-14 since taking over, including a disappointing 5-7 last season, guys. Does that make them even more dangerous because he's got to win this year?
Does it make them dangerous? I mean, yeah, you guys are desperate. When you get desperate, you'll do anything to win a game for sure. And that you always have to be on high alert for that. But unless he gets Kenneth Walker again out that transfer portal, I don't really see it happening.
Yeah.
Like I say, Michigan State, they were good back when I were playing. Something happened up there where the recruiting has died down a lot. So, like I say, athlete for athlete, they can't match.
He went big time into the transfer portal, and he did it again this year. But we don't even know how those pieces are going to go together as we discuss this right now. But he's really banking on that turning it around.
All right, guys, last thing, and you know I'm on record, Indiana Jones schedule full of booby traps. We'll start with Tyvis. What is their record this year?
Ohio State?
Yeah.
12-0.
12-0 regular season.
Is he pointing at him? Oh, me? 11-1.
12-0.
Ask him who the one is. Ask him who
who's the one?
So that's the beauty about doing this, guys. I don't have to name the one.
You do. You just put you on the
no,
spot.
it's like a 4-leg parlay. I just think at Notre Dame, at Wisconsin, home Penn State. I just think there's enough on there that it wouldn't shock me.
Who was the last one that you wanted to put in your parlay?
I'm trying to think who my 14 was, and it's not Michigan State. But anyway, I just think it wouldn't shock me with a new quarterback and 3 new offensive linemen if they have a slip-up.
I just know Ohio State wants to play for the first time ever 4
at
games.
Michigan.
Yeah,
4
that's
games.
what I was waiting on you to say.
Ohio State wants to, for the first time ever, to play 4 games in the state of Indiana, which would mean the Big Ten championship game. I think they'd get it done.
Well, I got them. I got them going 12-0 and winning in the Big Ten title game. This is a payback year. Ryan Day and the boys are coming to that team up north. All right, guys, great stuff. Keep it on 10 TV 97.1 The Fan for all your Buckeye coverage needs. Well, the Buckeye football season's upon us, and we're going to break things down with our fellas, Dave Holmes and Adam King, 10 TV, along with Tyvis Powell, the MVP of the national title game. You hear him on 97.1 The Fan, along with Tim May, 97.1 The Fan, and Letterman Rowe. He always points to himself.
He should have done the tie.
He already did it.
Yeah.
All right, guys, last year Ryan Day said that he was maybe going to give up the play calling and free himself up to maybe get more involved with the team, definitely get more involved with the team. Tyvis, what does that mean to you? And does he say get more involved? Is he going to get more involved? How?
Well, I think that when you're a play caller, you fall victim to looking at that sheet. You know, you're not feeling the pulse of this team or the vibe of your team because you're so worried about calling the right play, looking at the defense out there and making sure that your quarterback gets the right call and we're in the right offense. So when you give that duty up, you have some input. You can see it, but you can see that your defense coming off the field and you can see the conversations. You can hear things. You can take the headset off and hear the conversations around you and feel the vibe and the momentum of the team. And if it's not good, you can nip it in the bud and address it right then and there rather than just waiting to halftime or rather waiting to another coach to step up and fill that void for you.
Yeah, and we watched him in the spring and then, first few practices this year. Yeah, I think he's getting a kick out of wandering the field, so to speak, and getting a feel not just for his offense like you're talking, because he's definitely going to be involved with the offense. It would be stupid for him not to be one of the great offensive minds out there in college football. But he wants to know when I'm having trouble with this defense, for example, last year. What is what am I really looking at? What should I say my trouble is? He's going to be much more of an expert, perhaps, and I make this confronting. It sounds like a really getting after it kind of deal. But when he addresses Jim Knowles with concerns, he's going to be coming at it more from a knowledge standpoint as opposed to just an educated fan who just doesn't like what he's seeing out there. Fix it.
All right, Dave. He has a new offensive coordinator in Brian Hartline. Does Hartline call the plays this year? And I want to preface this because we talked to Ryan about this the other day. Ryan's going to be in the offensive meetings. He's going to be in the game planning. And on Saturdays, I believe he's still going to have his headset on.
Yeah, well, shout out to the Stark County boys. I would trust any Stark County guy to run my offense. What's up, Brian? Yeah, so will he call the plays? I don't necessarily think he will, and I don't necessarily think he should, because if I look at what's been the issue with this team the last few years, it's not an offense that finishes in the top 3 every single time. That said, you can still give him an increased role. I still think the CEO should make all the big decisions, and maybe plays are those, but you don't make the PowerPoints, right? So let Brian Hartline be more active, let him be maybe more involved in the game planning to take a load off your plate so you can focus a little more on defense. But if Ryan Day was brought here to be an offensive genius, and he's proven to be such, I don't know how much I want to take that away from him. So I want more Hartline, not necessarily a whole lot less Day.
Well, I think that those two will be together, and they'll come up with the play sheet.
Sure.
Okay.
It's
and
a collaboration.
Then I think at the end of the day, his input is on that play sheet.
Yeah.
He's going to let Brian Hartline make
the call that he was involved in.
Yeah.
Adam, can you imagine though a scenario on game day where Ryan Day is kind of, I mean, he's going to be, he said as much.
He's going to be Ryan Day. I mean, here's the interesting thing. The only reason that this conversation existed was because of the Michigan game. The second the Michigan game happened, in Ohio State, that was the first time we really saw them struggle on offense. They struggled on offense against Maryland a little bit, and everybody said Ryan needs to focus less on the play callings. And then you know what he did? He went out and dropped, 44 on the best defense in the country. I mean, 41. Math is hard.
Would have been big if they had 44. Would have been big, yeah.
That would have changed a lot of things.
I think when you look at that, of course he needs to be the play caller. And I think you're exactly right. Brian Hartline can have an elevated role, and we can all sit here and pretend like it matters that he has an elevated role. They would give him the title of chancellor of the entire university just to keep his wide receivers. Zone 6. We'll call you whatever you want.
And as Ryan said to us, this month, play calling on an offensive coordinator's plate is about number 3 or number 4 because they sit in these meetings. They come up with the play sheet, the whole coaches do. And basically, the offensive coordinator's job is to coordinate, meaning gather everyone's ideas, kind of collate things into what you want to do, what you want to be known as an offense, et cetera, going ahead from one game to the next. That doesn't mean the head coach, no head coach I've ever known has just sort of stepped over on the side and said, I'm never calling another play. I'm not going to get involved at all.
That's true.
Like, I can name you 100 of them. When it push comes to shove, Ryan Day is going to be part of that decision. But the flip side of it is you got to have trust in Brian Hartline to just be that guy to call the plays.
Why do you think Hartline could be a good play caller?
Well, because I think you could be a good play caller. If I've got all these great players.
Slow it down.
Brian Hartline is going to be a great play caller because, like he's saying, you got Ryan Day, you got Joe Philbin there, and on top of everything,
you got all this talent.
You got a play sheet, right?
Marvin Harrison Jr.
So for anybody that's never seen a play sheet, so what it is it has the down and distance, and it has the plays that fit this whatever the situation is. If it's 3rd and 8, this is what we're gonna run. If it's 3rd, 6 through 12. This is what you can run. All you have to do is go out there. I ain't gonna say all you gotta do because it is difficult. You gotta go out there, see what defense they're in, and make the call off of your sheet. Which Ryan Day,
are you saying that
Ryan Day is putting the sheet together? So it's there. The answer is right there. You just gotta pick the right one. It's like multiple choice.
It's like a Chinese restaurant menu. You got poultry, seafood, and beef, and then you got appetizers, and you got these other things you can order. I mean, it's almost not throwing darts because they do. As a game develops, you realize who you've got mismatches against and things like that. And that's why, like you just said, Ryan, they can watch the game now and maybe even pay more attention to those kind of things and suggest plays. Believe me, if he suggests a play,
he ain't gonna suggest it.
Brian's going to call it.
He's going to call the play.
And he's from Stark County. We keep overlooking that.
Next Ryan Day presser, I want you to say to him, Ryan, is calling plays the easiest part of your job? We hear it's like reading a menu.
Well, he already said it was like number 3 or number 4 on the bottom on the list, so that question's already been answered.
Yeah.
Dave, Ryan has always worked with the quarterbacks, and he kind of alluded in the interview the other day, that's not changing. He still needs to have a relationship with the quarterback.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of this, and I think Adam's right, a lot of it was because of what happened after the Michigan game, and they were looking whatever. But The guy's the quarterback whisperer.
He is. There are two coaches that you don't question when it comes to quarterbacks, Lincoln Riley and Ryan Day. I mean, their track record is second to none. You go there, you get developed, you become a first-round pick. So until he stops producing first-round picks or win a Heisman.
Or a Heisman ceremony.
Yeah, certainly, at least getting to New York City. So to me, yeah, he doesn't need to take his hands off the wheel here at all. I mean, this is not Heartline take the wheel. It's just, elevate the role a little bit. And like we said, I think it'll be fine.
You know what's funny? I asked Kyle McCord the other day. You've got Todd Fitch sitting there. You've got Corey Dennis, the quarterback's coach. You got Brian Hartline, the offensive coordinator, and you got Ryan Day. Who do you listen to the most? Because they're all going to have input, And he kind of definitely basically said, it does finally come down to Ryan Day because he's the one who's going to make the decision on who the head coach is. But there's a lot of help there for whoever does become the starting quarterback. But it begins with Ryan Day.
Ryan Day. One other thing I wanted to ask you guys before we break on this subject. If he does free up some time, and I've often said he's got a great defensive mind. Everyone talks about he's offensive genius. Well, he spends every day scheming against the best defenses in the country. Mm-hmm. Who wouldn't? He knows defense inside and out, how to beat them. Does he get more involved with the defense with Coach Knowles this year? And because obviously that was the bugaboo the last two games last season.
Yeah, I mean, I asked him. That was the last question I asked him after the loss to Georgia there in that big press conference. Was how disappointed finally in the final analysis you give up these big plays again. And he was quite disappointed because they scored 41 points against basically what people thought was maybe the best defense in the country. And then in the end, the fourth quarter, they couldn't get it done. They couldn't hang on. I really think this move is as much to get more involved as the whole head coach aspect, meaning, like I said earlier, being able to talk expertly to Jim Knowles and those guys about what he likes and doesn't like, what he's seeing from the defense, and then he'll go from there. He's definitely playing this by ear as this season goes. But he knew, you can look back the last several years, what's been missing from this team to put it over the top has been that just pure knockdown, drag-out defense. Not that anybody can play that kind of defense anymore with the current rules, but he knows that's what's been missing, right, Tyvis?
Yeah, I mean, listen, 2019 was the last great defense they had. If they had a good defense for the past few years, we'd be national champions.
All right, guys, great stuff. Keep it on 10 TV, 97.1 The Fan, the home of the Buckeyes, for all your Buckeye football coverage needs. Well, the Buckeye football season's upon us. We'll break things down with our guys, Dave Holmes and Adam King of 10 TV, along with former Ohio State defensive back Tyvis Powell. You hear him on 97.1 The Fan. And, of course, our guy, Tim May, 97.1 The Fan, and Letterman Row. All right, this is going to be Jim Knowles' second year with his new defense at Ohio State. Dave, how much pressure is Jim Knowles feeling coming into this season?
On a scale from 1 to 2.1 million, about 2.1 million.
Where'd you get that number?
That's how much money approximately they're paying him to be the defensive coordinator. So for me, year one was really, really good. They saw improvement across the board. And let's forget what you saw against Georgia and Michigan for just a second.
How?
Hold on. Objectively speaking, they were better for 85% of the season.
Absolutely.
They were. The facts.
I agree.
Facts.
They were.
True.
Yeah. No, it's, nobody's arguing.
But 2.1 million.
That's a big but.
2.1 million, the return on investment is you got to beat Michigan and you got to play better than that, give up 5 long touchdowns, lose that game to Georgia the way they did. So he has to be better. So the pressure for Jim Knowles is off the charts. Now, in his benefit, in his favor, I think he has the most returning talent that this defense has had in at least 4 years, maybe even longer. They're experienced, right where it counts there in the middle of the defense and the D ends. They have Denzel Burke. If he's back to freshman Denzel Burke, there's no reason this isn't a top 3 defense, but they were that for much of last year, just not when it mattered.
All right, I'm going to let you rebut that because you were just staring at him. What do you want to say?
Yeah, you're staring me down, Tyvis.
Listen, I agree with everything that you're saying. I think he's under a lot of pressure this year as well. I mean, listen, you come to Ohio State, your issue is win the national championship. You're getting more talent here than you did at Oklahoma State.
Yep.
You got to find a way to win these games. If your offense is putting up that many points, at least you could do is hold your team to at least 28, 21, something like that. So I think that, it's a lot of pressure because the national championship will be won or lost with the production of this defense.
I think you nailed one thing real quick. It's that there's no excuses this year for Jim Knowles. Last year you could say, hey, it's the first year. Really, for the Buckeye defense, the last couple of years, you could say, well, they were dealing with new defensive coordinator, transitioning. Talent wasn't there. Mm-hmm. Everything is there this year for Jim Knowles. Yeah. So it's all the pressure.
Tim, that leads me into the question for you. Year two, Ryan Day thinks this defense will play better because there'll be more of a familiarity. Do you buy into that? And from what we've heard so far, the guys, Jim Knowles flat out told me the other day, the guys know what they're doing now. They're not learning. They now know what they're doing.
Well, just think about that first coaches meeting in 2022. Perry Eliano and Tim Walton were introducing themselves to Jim Knowles. You follow my drift?
Yeah.
And then they were all introducing themselves to Larry Johnson. So just the familiarity of the staff, knowing what they're teaching, knowing how to get the right people on the field at the right time, that's part of the deal. But it's also, like you said, Jim Knowles' familiarity with his talent on hand. We saw some major mix-ups at times and some major mismatches at times in the secondary when they needed them, when they needed those things to be strong the most at the end of the year. And whether it was a player making a mistake, a player getting himself out of position, or just having a wrong call, all of those conspired to what you saw in the fourth quarter against Georgia and basically all day against Michigan. Now, like you said, you don't have that excuse anymore. They're not looking at it. I mean, they've got almost everybody back.
Yeah.
That's huge. And I'm not talking about not just the players, but the coaching staff. And then you got some young risers, Sonny Styles and C.J. Hicks, who are going to stir this drink.
Adam, and that takes me to the next thing, because how huge was that they did get all these veterans back? Dave alluded to it. We just heard Tim. But to me, the key is Tommy Eichenberg coming back. That guy is a throwback. He doesn't say a lot, but he is the leader of that defense, and I love the way the guy plays, and I think the defense will feed off to him. And he's going to be like a coach on the field this year. To me, that's huge.
I think when you look at Tommy Eichenberg, it's a perfect pinpoint of what this defense is to come this season. And for the first time, and I'll say it, I think that Ryan Day would admit it, the Buckeye defense has been missing an edge. Probably since that Chase Young, Jeff Okudah era, they've been missing a little bit of that silver bullet edge that people love to talk about. Every position on this defense, first of all, going into fall camp, we pretty much know who's going to be on the field. I mean, we finally now know that Sonny Styles is so good, he's just going to be out there. And that's what it needs to be. The best players need to play. And when you look at a guy like Tommy Eichenberg, you look at JTT, you look at Jack Sawyer on the end, and you talked about Denzel Burke. Denzel Burke could be a first-round pick if he gets back to who he was.
People still think he is?
This defense, really, they are all like Tommy, but Tommy just exemplifies it the most because he walks around grunting.
I asked Tommy the other day, I said, who has two healed thumbs now and is playing linebacker? And I want him to go me, because obviously he played the last game of the year with two broken thumbs. I mean, this guy is a warrior personified. Then you got Steel Chambers also back as a starting. Your two starting linebackers are back, but you got these rising guys. And I keep bringing his name up.
On the field.
I keep bringing C.J. Hicks' name up because you're going to see him. There's a lot of veteran there, and you got a lot of you can sprinkle in on this stuff.
Yeah. Tyvis, the guy you played for, Urban Meyer, loves a football team that has an edge. He loves a football team that is angry.
Yes.
The defensive guys, and you know those guys.
I do, very well.
And they've got feelings. They're proud, and they got their feelings hurt last year.
Yeah.
They saw everything that was said about them, that the defense let them down and all that. How angry, how big of a chip will be on those guys when they come in this season that they want to shut the critics up?
Well, it reminds me of us in 2013. When we had Braxton, Carlos Hyde, and all those guys, we got to the Big Ten championship and we lost to Michigan State. The defense was just an Achilles heel that year. I'm sorry, guys, we were. 2014, that whole offseason, that's all we heard was how terrible our defense was. The silver bullets are gone. So we spent that whole offseason saying, you know what, we're going to figure this thing out. We're going to get it back. We got a coaching change by the name of Chris Ash coming in and being co-defense coordinator with Luke Fickell. He simplified that defense to where you knew exactly what you had, and you can go point A to point B, 4 to 6, like Coach Meyer would say. When I think about this upcoming season, I think that they have the players that they need to get things done. There were a lot of injuries that were on that defense last year, so I will give them that. You guys were hurt, and that did affect you a little bit. But in the same breath, if the rule for football is if you go out on that field, you are 100%. I don't care what's wrong. They're not hearing no excuses. I think Jim Knowles has to do a better job of understanding what his strengths of his players are and put them in position to win, and not what maybe necessarily what he did off in the past.
Here's what I want to know, and this is for all you guys. We saw issues in the pass department. Was it personnel? Was it blown coverage? Was it simply mistakes? Was it maybe the wrong defense? Was it a combination of all?
I'd like to think
Is there
it's
something-
multiple
is
choice.
there something-
You're the guy.
Give us the pivot. Give us the pivot. I've seen this.
What is it?
He has
What
a
was it?
demonstration.
Start with Tyvis.
He has a demonstration.
Y'all
Do the
hilarious.
pivot.
Y'all hilarious. All right, so listen. Cut it out. Cut that out. So when I look at the defense last year, I think that Jim Knowles had to do a better job of understanding what he had. If you're going to call cover zero for a lot of guys, for people that don't know, is when you don't have no safety help over the top.
Yeah.
Zero means that it's 0 guys in the post. So you're sending 6 to 7 guys on a blitz. So your DBs are by themselves and man-to-man. That's fine to do. I wouldn't necessarily do it on a first and second down. It would be a surprise to some offenses, but these teams were smart enough to pick that up. If you don't have the guys that can cover for that, you can't continue to call that. And I think he continuously put this secondary on the field by themselves, and they didn't have no help. Yeah. And I would have been okay with it if our leading sacker had more than 6.5 sacks.
It was
question, real
amazing.
quick,
It was
real
amazing.
quick.
A defense with 3 safeties on the field. There was no safety deep so many times, or nobody there to turn back the play. I mean, he put all that into his blender, man. And I know he's learned from it.
You and I have had this conversation, and I'm curious. You said in that scenario, 2014 championship game, you would have audibled. You would have said, "Hey guys, we're not going to go."
Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Do you understand in a situation that it's 4 minutes left in the game and we're up 14 points? All we need to do is not let them score. So what do? You keep the ball in front of you. If you hear your defensive coordinator call cover 0 and you sit there and everybody's questioning it, you are okay to make an audible.
So
and
in
if
year two,
if everybody's on the same page, so if he said cover 0 and we said, no, we running cover 3 and everybody ran cover 3, that's fine because everybody's on the same page. We'll just say we didn't hear you.
This is a veteran.
what you do.
This is a veteran, experienced defense. Chindy Checkwell brought that up on my podcast back in the summer. Eventually, the players on the field have to take ownership.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to buy in. But then when they know it's a bad call, by then, you're usually. But you've played together for a couple of years. You're kind of all on the same page. You can like wink at a guy, and I'm going.
Yeah.
And you're falling back and stuff. That's what you want to see develop with this defense this year. That no matter what, they understand what's at stake and makes the play.
Last couple things. At the end of the day, this is Ryan Day's football team. How involved is he week to week with the defense in preparation? As I said before, I think he's got a brilliant defensive mind. He schemes against them every day, the best defenses in the country. And how involved is he on game day?
I think that he's more involved with the defense because of everything that's at stake. Potentially his job could be at stake. So if I know that this could potentially be my last year, I'm in every single meeting. I need to know everything inside and out because if I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna go out with my cause. So I think he's definitely gonna pay more attention to what's going on the defensive side. However, it is still Jim Knowles' defense. I think he would do a great job of pointing out the weaknesses of his defense and how teams will go to attack his defense. And I think that's how he gets involved on game
Like
day.
Tyvis and I just said earlier, I mean, defense, you can look at it as a possible reason why they haven't won maybe 2 national championships in the last several years. He knows he had to get that fixed.
I'm on record. I think this defense is going to get some revenge this year and some payback. I'll start with you. What do you see out of the defense this year?
Oh, I think this is the most talented Ohio State defense since 2019. I think absolutely at every position they have at some point a top 5 in the country player, and I think that's what you need. Back to the Ryan Day thing, I think where he gets involved in the defense is kind of that cover 0 moment. Is where he goes 4 minutes in the game, what are we doing out here? No, timeout, let's just run cover 3. I think otherwise he trusts Jim Knowles, that's where you bring in Jim Knowles, but I think this defense is actually going to be much, much better.
What do you see out of it?
18 years of doing this, I don't think I've ever seen a player as inconsolable as Steele Chambers after the loss last year to Georgia. He was emotionally beside himself. I think he came back for this. I think Eichenberg came back for this. Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau. To me, this defense is going to be the defense they should have been for 12 games.
I think they have a great chance to be the turnaround unit in the country. And that sounds funny, but as the year went on last year, you saw teams catching up with what they were doing, like Tyvis was talking about. Everybody falls into patterns. The one thing you don't want to be is ever in an unbreakable pattern. But I think they're much smarter about what they're doing, and not just the coaches, but the players. I think it may be the turnaround unit in the country.
I think the defensive line carries this team. I think last year they were just almost there. There's so many games that they were so close to the sack. I think they realized what happened last year. They take the next step, which then ultimately helps everybody else on the rest of this defense. The defensive line will be the strong point. Secondary will be back.
I agree 100%. It's easy to blame the secondary, but the best pass defense is a pass rush. I think it's coming. And I'll tell you one thing. I asked Jim Knowles the other day. I said, if at the end of the year you guys are holding the national championship trophy, would it surprise you? And he said, absolutely not. Let's go get it. I like that.
That's pretty good.
All right, guys, great stuff. Keep it on 10 TV, 97.1 The Fan for all your Buckeye needs.